What is going on, Teach Better family? It's 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. This is your live recap of tonight's Teach Better chat over on Twitter. I am joined by our very special guest moderator, Kelly Croy, who I've been connected with for a while now, but I don't think we've ever been live or on camera together, so this is super cool. We just got done with a great chat. Super excited to dive into it. We're going to talk a little bit about where the questions came from, Kelly's favorite themes and tweets from tonight, and we'll get to know him a little bit more as well. If you're with us, you're watching, drop into the chat. Let us know where you're watching for. Drop in the comments, sorry. Let us know where you're watching from. Tell Kelly how awesome he is, and we'll be back in about 60 seconds. All right, we are back. I've got Kelly Croy here, who just led us in a great Teach Better chat over on Twitter, all about mindfulness and education. Kelly, my friend, how are you?
Thanks for having me on, Jeff. I'm doing great, and that was a lot of fun. That was a great chat.
It was a lot of fun. I love the chats that get going because you can tell that was a good topic and good questions. People are excited about it. So before we dive in, because I want to dive into like the questions where they come from, your thoughts on some things. For anybody who's watching that are now live with us, or later when a lot of people watch the replay of this too, who may not be connected with you, maybe don't know who Kelly Croy is. Can you give us just share, like, who is Kelly Croy? What do you do? You do a lot of stuff. So
yeah,
like go ahead and go all the places that you do. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, sure. First and foremost, I have the heart of a teacher. I spent 26 years in a 7th grade classroom. I'm super proud of that. The last 4 years, I've been an administrator, director of innovation instruction for Port Clinton City Schools. I'm proud of that as well. I've written a book on leadership, Along Came a Leader. And a year ago, almost today, I wrote this book, Unthink Before Bed. It's a children's book on mindfulness. And I speak on stage to teachers every year. I'm excited. I love all things education. And most importantly, tonight, I'm excited to be part of the Teach Better chat. And this is awesome. I thank you for this opportunity.
I love it. Kelly, I think you're also a podcaster.
That's right.
A pretty stinking good one, too.
Thank you.
You were a guest on Teach Better Talk, and I remember it was a while ago, but I remember Ray talking about, we went into like a fit about how you have such a perfect podcasting voice, which people are hearing right now. But you do have the Wired Educator podcast, and you have another one too. That's the one I listen to.
Yeah. I do the Future Focus podcast.
Future Focus, thank you.
Yeah.
And you also, you forgot to mention that you wrote the book, but you also illustrate.
Yeah. So, tonight, one of the big things we talked about is what is mindfulness. And I think that mindfulness is completely misunderstood. And for me personally, and I imagine a lot of people listening, one of the ways that I'm mindful, one of the ways that I get in tune with my mind and my body is through drawing. And it's something that I recognized as a young child, and then you forget about because you get busy with life and all the other things going on. And even today, I was at an administrative retreat. And one of the hosts, Carrie Sanchez, shout out to her, a middle school principal at Port Clinton City Schools. She asked us, "What do you love?" And I think quite often we don't do the things that we love, right? We do what's easy or what we think somebody else needs, and I think it's important. So yes, Jeff, I like to draw, and that is how I'm mindful. That's probably my best way of being mindful.
So let's go into you already sort of touched on this. So I'm going to go right into it, and we'll get in chat because I think this is a great place to start. Anyways. You sort of touched on it, but what is mindfulness? That was actually the first question of the chat. How do you define mindfulness? As someone who literally wrote a book on it,
right?
How do you define that?
Well, great. So mindfulness is our attention to ourself, our mind, our thoughts, and our body. And here's a great example. So you get into your car and you're alone, or you're in the shower. And those are probably, you get these great ideas, right? These wonderful ideas pop into your head. Why? Well, it's the first time that you've slowed down. It's the first time that you've been alone. It's the first time that you haven't been active. A shower or a car kind of forces you to be still, right? And so it gives us this moment of clarity, or we lay down at bed at night. So we run around all day long and we lay down in bed and we're trying to get some rest, and we haven't taken steps during the day to get in tune with our mind and body, and our brain gets just flushed with all these thoughts and ideas, and we can't get to sleep. And so that's why we really need to do some things during the day, and it might be different for other people, to get in tune with ourselves. Some of the great tweets today were, people are taking walks. I just think too many people think you got to sit in a chair in lotus position on a pillow and ring a bell and go for 15 minutes. That is not what mindfulness is. But we can explore different ways to be mindful. There's no right or wrong way.
It really starts with a big piece of self-awareness, right? Like you were touching on, like remembering that drawing and art is something, a way for you to be mindful. Like it really does start with that like what is it for me, right? What is it for you individually? What is mindfulness? Right. I love how you break that down though. So let's talk about the chat specifically. So it was mindfulness and education. So when you were creating the question, you thought of the topic, created a question, put them together. What were you hoping that people participating in the chat tonight were going to walk away with from the chat? And second part of the question is, do you feel like that happened? Did we achieve that tonight? Absolutely.
So I wanted people to understand what mindfulness is and is not. And I wanted them to leave with some methods that they could put to use, some ways that they could be mindful. And that kind of blew up. I even walked away with even more than I had going in. So it helped me as well. I also wanted people to understand that any amount of mindfulness practice is better than zero. And, I'm a parent. I have 4 daughters. I have a lot. I do a lot of things like you and probably a lot of the listeners and viewers right now. And we just go from thing to thing to thing to thing. And then we're surprised we're burnt out. That was my main goal. And so I was kind of blown away tonight by some of the suggestions and some of the practices some schools already have going for them. So it's great. So I want to get into those, but I want to touch real quick on something you just said, which was that a little bit of mindfulness is better than zero. And I think this happens so often with a lot of things, with a lot of like any kind of habit you're trying to build or quit or changes you're trying to make, is that we get so stuck on like what we think it's supposed to be, what we think we're supposed to do. And it's supposed to be at least 30 minutes or even just at least 10 minutes, whatever. And you can't get there, that we end up doing nothing. Right. It's just like, it's the analysis paralysis type. It's same type of thing. Right. And we do that versus, hey, if it's 30 seconds of mindfulness, it's probably more than you did last hour, possibly the last week, right? And if you start with, if you can get 30 seconds every now and then, you get a minute, then you get 5 minutes, and you can eventually get to whatever it is that you think you're supposed to be at. And I think that was just you kind of threw it in there. That's super powerful to remember, especially with something that is so powerful like mindfulness, is that if you're not doing anything to practice that yet, just the littlest thing get you better, right? And so I really like that. Yeah, I'd like to jump in and say, that is very important. Think of all the devices that we own that have the ability to pause what we're doing, right? Or stop or turn off. And I think we forget that we can do the same with our feelings and our mind. We really can. And some people are listening like, no, when I feel a certain way, I can't control that. Yes, you can. And there's practice, and you get better at it, actually, the more that you practice. For teachers, sometimes it's hard for them to get away, right? And that is to hit pause. And sometimes it depends on the age of the kids and things like that. Once the kids get older, you can ask them to read something or if you're working with another teacher. But I think that's something administrators can gift to teachers. Is like, here's my cell phone number. Man, if you're feeling it, I'll come in, I'll hang out with the kids for a little bit. Take a walk just down the hallway and get a drink and come back. And you could literally come back a new person, right? Or stop in the classroom and play a song, just say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling a little stressed out right now. Anybody else? We're going to take a minute and we're going to play a song or something like that. And that sounds very elementary, works for all grades. Everybody loves it. Yes. Yeah. So let's talk. You just mentioned a couple of cool things, but like from a classroom perspective, what were some of the tips, ideas, things that came through tonight
that you particularly that caught your eye? You said there was at least one or two that you took away specifically. Share those with us that you grabbed from this.
Yeah, well, I'd love to say, hey, I'm an expert because I wrote a book on mindfulness. But the reason I wrote the book on mindfulness is truthfully because I suffer. I suffer from anxiety and stress and things like that. And so if you want to get better at something, you research it, you work on it, you practice it, you share what you learn, you get feedback, and you go from there. I think too often people see being vulnerable and showing our emotions and things like that as a weakness. And I think that's very American to not share that sort of that part of our life. And I think it is okay to do that, but you got to understand what you're doing. It's okay to share your emotions and talk about it. And so tonight, I think a lot of the participants were very vulnerable in sharing. One, that this is something that they need to work on because a lot of people just want to keep it personal. And two, I was really blown away by some of the tweets of practices that schools already had in place. I wish I had a list in front of me, but one school has 3 scheduled mindfulness.
I saw that, yeah.
Yes. I put the little mind-blowing emoji on that one.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fantastic. I saw a teacher who, some of them already had practices in place. And I'm going to go back through the chat and capture some of those, taking walks. Some people shared their playlists. I also love journaling. I think that's a great one. That's how I kind of end my day, with a little reflection on it. And I think we beat ourselves up too much. I think one reason that mindfulness is so important, our mind is always talking. It's the only person we can't escape from. We're the only person we can't get away from. And so we have to learn how to hit pause and get away. And it's not necessarily distraction. It's more necessarily control. Rather than say, I'm going to distract myself, say, no, I'm purposely going to think about something pleasant like gratitude or, a serene image of a location. And in my book on Think Before Bed, and when I talk to people, it's not just a visualization. You try to Olympic athletes do this. You try to include all your senses. And so if you love the beach and you're like, hey, I'm going to think about a great place I love to be, you need to see it. You need to feel the wind on you, the heat. You need to hear it. Try to involve as many, even if you can taste the sand pieces in your mouth or something, or feel it. That's really important. And so, I wanted to share that. Yeah, thanks.
So you've mentioned a couple of times, so I want to have you share a little bit more on it. Tell us about your book,
Sure.
Think Before Bed. Break down sort of the synopsis of it.
Yeah, well, I got it right here. I wanted a book that I thought, how great would it be if young people learned how to be mindful and to learn to think better. And I love to draw. And so you see my dogs on there. And the book, every page I put it in dark mode, kind of like our phones have dark mode, so every page has a black, it's not bright. And there's a certain rhythm and rhyme, kind of like Dr. Seuss-like, that's hypnotic in a way that relaxes us and get to sleep. In the back of the book, there is a QR code that will take you to the audio version of me reading the book. And I read it in a very particular way. And I like to say that I've been putting kids to sleep with my voice for over 30 years. So I'm a professional. But I really had a fun drawing the pictures and the feedback. If you go on Amazon and look at the comments that people put that when they purchased the book and read it, almost everyone says something about the adults appreciating it and applying what they learned as the kids.
So that's what I was going to say, because we have that book in my house and we use it with my kids. And the first time we read it, that's exactly what I thought was, this is not a kid's book. Like it was great. My daughter deals with and suffers with very, very high anxiety and stuff. And so we try to do a lot of that. So I remember back when you first put it out, because we've been connected, you and I, through a podcast group and stuff, and I grabbed it. I don't think I've done an Amazon review yet, though. So I got to fix that problem. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, and I think that's the key. And then that's true for a lot of children's books. But I think specifically because this particular topic of mindfulness, you can really pull so much out. It's like you said with, a classroom, stop and playing music. It sounds elementary, but it's not. It works for everyone. Yeah. And it works way beyond high school too, right? It's the same thing. Mindfulness practices, even if they seem or look or feel, and you find it or feel elementary, you find them in a kid's book, they still work. Yeah. If they're the right thing for you.
And I think true wisdom in life is simple, right? I really do. We could all write a diet book, right? Drink more water, take a walk.
Exercise more.
But do we do these things, right? Do we do the simple things in life that really work? Like take $20 and put it in a can each week, and then in 5 weeks you'll have 100. I mean, these are simple pieces of wisdom. And when it comes to mindfulness, it's not like you have to go to India and study for 5 years, or not speak to another human for 6 months or something like that. There's small practices that we can put in, and we build those habits. And I want to say one other thing, because you mentioned your daughter. I don't want to say that I'm sorry that that's happening, because I've suffered from anxiety my whole life, and it is a condition, and it can be really hard, but sometimes it's also kind of like a superpower. Anxiety is what helps me do all the things that I do, that I podcast, that I write, that I do all those things. It is really a gift. And so I don't really want it to go away. I know this sounds kind of rough, Jeff, because you're a great father, but I want to learn how to cope with it. And I want to learn how to use it. And so that anxiousness, I feel, is awesome if you're an athlete. It's awesome if you're an entrepreneur. But you got to learn these skills. And that's why I wrote the book. You got to learn these skills young, so you don't torture yourself. Because when you get to my age, and you're still having those sort of feelings and you're not in control, it does start wearing on your life. I hope that didn't seem insensitive.
No, I love it. I'm 1,000% on board with you. I love that you said it, because we've talked about that with her. Like, she has it, and a lot of it, she has like her feelings, like her feels, her emotions, ways. Her empathy is off the charts.
Yes,
she will have a breakdown because she's thinking about, and we'll ask what's on. She'll say, I'm thinking about someone being hurt, and we're like, well, who? And she's like, I don't know, just somebody. And she's literally just thinking about the fact that somewhere someone is hurting, and that's bothering her. And I'm like, dear Lord, your heart is huge. Like, and if we can control that, right? If we can harness that, that is a superpower. I love that you said it that way, because it is something that she has I just love so much about her.
You can't teach that, Jeff.
You can't. And so, but hopefully what we can do is teach her how to control that and harness that, so that it doesn't hurt her emotionally or hold her back or anything like that.
Right.
And we've had incredible progress over the last year or so with her. And so totally agree. I love that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Good for you.
So one of the things that I love to do on our chats is, so we were in the chat, but sometimes it's moving so fast we don't always see everyone's answers. So I love to have the moderator give their answers live versus the pre-typed out text. So let me grab one of the questions here. I'm going to have you share.
I hope I can remember. Okay.
We've touched on a lot of that. That's the thing. We've already kind of touched on stuff like that. Actually, I want to go here, because I saw a lot of it shared, but I'd love to hear from you, like you personally. I'm going to question 4. What mindful resources or tools do you recommend? Like, so you mentioned journaling and things like that. What are some of the things that you do? And then what do you, so like, for example, like journaling, are you a pen and paper guy? Are you digital on your phone? Like, is it like, I do morning pages where it's literally just brain dump and I never look at it again. But then I have an app that I do reflection on, so it's a little different. So
sure. I'll share a lot of my tools with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yes.
In the back of my book, Unthink Before Bed, I list the 10 ways to unthink. And part of that is organization. One of those is getting organized. So when I go to bed at night, I have to lay everything out. And that's something I would recommend to your daughter. It takes away that anxiousness. Everything has its place. Every place has its thing. That's what I love to say in my house. Putting those devices away and things like that. As far as what I use, I love a Moleskine journal. I love that there's a mind to body to hand connection. I do a lot of bulleting in that. On my devices, I love the Day One app, and I use it to capture kudos. I sadly am one of those people that needs some praise. Sometimes I think, Jeff doesn't like me or something. And so I have a little kudos journal, and I'll go back and there's something that you said nice about me. And I'm like, and it takes that anxiousness away. And it's kind of sad that I need that. I need that. Yeah.
But like, I think it's so powerful to admit that, because a lot of people don't like to say that, but like, well, most of us need that.
Yeah.
Like, some more than others, whatever. Some days we need it more than others. Yeah. So when you say that you're capturing kudos, does that mean, so like I tweet something out and say, hey, I loved that podcast episode. You capture a picture of that?
I grab a screenshot of it. And if I don't do it right that second, I do it before I go to bed and I add it to my kudos journal. And, I am a very confident, maybe even sometimes I don't think arrogant, but I can be a very confident guy. but then I can do a 180 and just
Same here.
feel self-doubt,
Same here.
worthless. I'm fake, and I can get into that valley. And the
Yeah.
truth is, everybody is. And somebody who says, well, that's not me, they're not being completely honest, because everybody gets there. I get there a little longer than other people. And so I need these tools. I got to go back and say, yeah, this person's not upset with me. And not only that, one time they really helped me out. They shared this out, or they left a review or something like that. And that's why I need that. I do love the Calm app. I pay the subscription. I use it every night before bed. One of my youngest daughters is starting to use it a little bit.
Similar to that, I use Headspace.
Yeah, I like Headspace. Headspace is good. I love playlists. Those are some of the tools. But we got to be careful. So, like, we want to learn about things, but there comes a point where you can read a lot about golf, but you got to get on the golf course, right? And you can go and read about mindfulness and self-help and all these things. And then, I get another book. Now I'm going to listen to a podcast, and now I'm going to buy this. But you're not practicing, you're not practicing. And so, sometimes you just got to do it, right? You just got to do what they say you do. And that's better than reading and learning.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that goes back to the earlier mention of you can start really small. Yeah. I saw several people mention the breathe notification on the Apple Watch.
Yes.
And if you have that, that's actually a really great small stop. I know when my watch tells me breathe, I never pay attention to it.
I laugh at it sometimes.
But I'm like, man, what a simple, easy way to like ease into it. I'm like, okay, when my Apple Watch tells me to breathe, I'm going to do is it 30 seconds or whatever it does of breathing? Yeah. And that's when I stop, because I now know that Kelly Croy said a little bit of mindfulness is better than none. And that's going to give me so like, it's a really subtle thing, but that can be the start of you getting into that, right? It's getting on the course and swinging once or twice.
There's been a lot of research done about, entryways. And if you've ever studied any Japanese culture, you'll notice, like, in the middle of a garden, they'll have like just out in the middle of they'll have like an arch or an entryway. And there's been a lot of science and study about when we walk through an entryway or a passageway, even if it's like an arch, it does something to the mind. Have you ever, Jeff, walked out of a room and forgot something, and you physically go back to the room as if it's a physical object to remember it? Have you ever caught yourself doing that? If not, you might. You're like,
I will now. I'm sure I have, but I don't know that I ever caught myself. I will now. I'm going to do it every time.
Our brain actually compartmentalizes things to locations sometimes.
When you lose a thought, walking back through the threshold of the room brings it back in.
And even with testing, can I bring up testing? Even with testing, they say it's often better to be in the room that you learn the material in than to be out of it. But it's very true. So I guess my point is, I literally suffer from anxiety attacks. I'll say it. It's been a while. I've had some doozies in my life. As a matter of fact, I even got hauled in an ambulance thinking I was having a heart attack. It felt real. And I can't explain that to anybody else. But there's other people that have had it, and they checked me out. They're like, "You're fine," and then they're like, "We got to talk." And these things happen to people. And so our anxiousness, our stress, our frustration, our overwhelm, which a lot of teachers went through last year, there are people who do not understand that it is real, that it has physical ailments. People can get skin ulcerations, they can get sores in their mouth. There's all sorts of physical things that can happen. And so, a minute is awesome. So if you have the power to get out of the physical place you're in, even for a minute, walk down the hallway to get a drink out of the drinking fountain, or a step outside, things like that, those really count. And I really want to recommend Ryan Holiday's book, Stillness is the Key. It's not what you think it is. He talks about hobbies. He talks about physical labor, the importance of doing like chores. These things are important. Getting out in the sun, taking walks. Great book. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. So much good stuff here. Kelly, before we go, I want to mention a couple of things just for our audience. Tomorrow morning, our daily drop-in is back. We kicked it off this week, 5 days a week, every morning at 7 a.m. Eastern time. Ray is live again tomorrow morning. with Dr. Dave Schmittou, who's now finally back home in Florida. He's been traveling all week, so don't miss them tomorrow. And then next week, I got to look at my notes so I'll forget it. Next week, we have Kirsten Whelan leading us, talking about evidence of learning, EOL, how we know what students know. That's our Teach Better Chat next week, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern time, every Thursday over on Twitter. Kelly, before we go, I want to make sure people, if they weren't in the chat tonight, because a lot of people watch this afterwards that weren't necessarily in the chat, and they want to connect with you, best places to go to connect with you. Make sure you mention the name of the book one more time. Again, the podcast, all that stuff. Where can we go? What are all the places that we can find you?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And this is so well done. I'm excited to be a part of it. You can follow me on Kelly Croy on Twitter, Wired Educator on Twitter. I host the Wired Educator podcast. Go to kellycroy.com or wirededucator.com. I would love to connect with you. I'm a real guy. I respond to everybody. I'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts. The book is Unthink Before Bed, a children's book on mindfulness. It's great for kids and adults. I think you'll love it. And that's it. Thank you so much, Jeff.
I love it. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate everyone that was dropping in the comments and sharing your thoughts and how much you love the chat tonight. Appreciate everyone who was in the chat, sharing all the resources, sharing your mindfulness tips and thoughts and everything. It was great. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Kelly, so appreciate you, brother. So happy we could do this. You hang on because I'll see you after I play this video and we go. But everyone else, have a fantastic night. Have a fantastic rest of your week and into the weekend. We appreciate you.